All right, let's be real. We've all had that moment, right? You're staring at a paper you just wrote, and you know something's just off. Today, we're going to hunt down that missing piece. And spoiler alert, it's almost always the thesis statement. We're going to figure out how to turn that thesis from a boring little sentence into the absolute engine of your entire paper.
So, have you ever wondered why some papers just pop? You read them and they totally change how you see something. And then others, well, they just kind of flop. What's the difference? You might think it's about having more research or better facts, but nope. The secret, almost every single time, is the thesis statement.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to figure out why most thesis statements are so boring. Then, I'll show you 3 simple tests to stress test your own ideas. After that, we'll unveil a little secret weapon called the magic thesis sentence. And finally, we'll put it all together so you can walk away ready to write your own killer thesis.
All right, first things first. Let's talk about the big problem, the trap that pretty much everyone falls into at some point. And that's writing these really safe arguments. You know the ones. They're obvious, they just summarize the plot, and they don't actually argue anything.
So, to see what I mean, let's look at 2 different ways to analyze a classic movie, The Princess Bride. Thesis A is what a lot of us would write. The movie's about how true love is powerful. And yeah, I mean, it's not wrong, but it's also kind of boring, right? We all know that. Now look at Thesis B. Whoa. This one brings in a super weird detail, fighting sticks, and uses it to argue that love isn't some natural force, but something we're taught. Now that is an argument. That's where the magic happens. Okay, so the big question is, how do you get from that boring Thesis A to that brilliant Thesis B? Well, it's not just luck. There's actually a system. We're going to use a simple 3-part stress test that's designed to push your ideas from, meh to mind-blowing. And the first test is honestly my favorite. You have to make it weird. No, seriously. A great thesis needs to say something a little strange, a little unexpected. Weird is your friend here, because it means you're not just repeating what everyone already thinks. You're offering a genuinely new way of looking at things.
And this really gets to the core of what we're talking about. A good paper has to take a risk. It has to go out on a limb. Your job as a writer isn't to stay safely on the tree trunk. It's to crawl way out onto that shaky branch and then build it up with so much solid evidence and great argumentation that it becomes the strongest part of the whole tree.
So, let's circle back to our Princess Bride example. Thesis A, the true love one, is totally predictable. No risk there. But Thesis B, it gets weird. It zooms in on this tiny, seemingly random detail, the fighting sticks, and uses it to make this huge, surprising claim about how we learn to love. That is the kind of connection that makes your reader lean in and go, wait, what? Tell me more.
All right, on to test number 2. A great thesis has to do more than just state an opinion. It needs to build an argument. Think of it like a roadmap. It doesn't just tell your reader the destination, it promises them a specific, logical path to get there.
And the structure that follows is totally different. A weak thesis just gives you a pile of information. You're just like, here's a fact about the topic, and another one, and here's one more. But a strong thesis, that creates a chain of logic. It forces you to show how point A actually leads to point B, and how that builds towards your main conclusion. It's a journey, not just a list.
So if we go back to Thesis A, the true love one, that paper would just be a list, right? Here's a scene about true love, here's another. But Thesis B forces you to build an argument. You can't just drop that idea and walk away. You have to answer the question, how in the world do fighting sticks prove that love is socialized? It makes you connect the dots and actually build a case for your reader.
And this brings us to our third and final test. Be exclusive. Think of your thesis like a key. A really great thesis should be like a key that is so uniquely cut, it can only open one specific lock, the text you're analyzing. It can't be some generic master key that works everywhere. Let's actually run this test. Could our boring Thesis A work for, Pride and Prejudice? The story of Darcy and Elizabeth affirms the power of true love. Yep, totally works. And that is a huge red flag. Now, try to jam Thesis B onto Pride and Prejudice. An examination of fighting sticks suggests the grandson is being trained. It's nonsense. It completely falls apart because it's so specific to the Princess Bride. And that is a very, very good sign.
Okay, so we've covered all the theory. What makes a thesis good, what makes it bad. But now, let's get super practical. I want to show you a tool, kind of a secret weapon, that I call the magic thesis sentence.
It's basically a formula designed to help you build a thesis that passes all 3 of these tests.
The magic thesis sentence, or MTS for short, is really just a simple fill-in-the-blank template. But don't let its simplicity fool you. Its whole job is to act as a forcing function. It forces you out of that lazy summary mode and makes you do the real work of analysis, finding a specific, weird detail and explaining why on earth it's important.
So here it is. The formula goes like this. By looking at blank, that first blank is where you put your weird detail, your fighting sticks. Then we can see blank. That's your unique insight, what you see that others might miss. And finally, it is important because blank. This is the knockout punch. This forces you to answer the all-important so what question. It's like a little workout for your brain. And now for the big reveal, the real aha moment. Look what happens when we plug our brilliant Thesis B into this formula. It fits perfectly. By looking at the fighting sticks, we can see how the grandson is trained in true love. That's the unseen part. It is important because it suggests love is socialized, not natural. See? It slots right in. This is how you know your thesis is rock solid. It's got all the right parts.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We're going to wrap this up now by turning everything we've talked about into a simple, actionable checklist that you can use on your very next assignment.
So here you go. This is your thesis transformation checklist. First, always start with an observation, not just a big topic. Find your fighting sticks. Then run it through our 3 tests. Is it weird? Does it actually build an argument? And is it totally exclusive to your text? Use that magic thesis sentence to help you refine the idea. And most importantly, have the courage to go out on that limb and then back it up with great evidence. So I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about. For your next paper, for the next book you read or movie you watch, what's your unseen detail? What are your fighting sticks? Find that one strange thing that everybody else seems to be ignoring, because I promise you that's almost always where your next brilliant argument is hiding.